thanks to my patrons, I've just put some fuel in my tank. I'm going for a little ride because I want to talk about different bike styles and some things that I've learned through riding as many different types of bikes that I've now ridden. And a revelation that I kind of came to the other day that's a bit weird. Go on. So let's start at the beginning. I need to explain my background. No problem. Whoa, pigeon! I first started riding dirt bikes when I was about 12. And then when I was 22, I got my CBT. 21, 22, I got my CBT. And I got a 125cc Supermoto. And I basically, well, I had two of them in the end, but I basically rode that for about 7 years. Yeah, 7 years. Then I got my full license and I bought a DRZ 400, which is another Supermoto. So obviously the transition there was quite easy because, yeah, okay, the only real difference was a lot of power. I still had to get used to that, but the style of riding felt very familiar to me. Incidentally, I did my bike training on a Gladius 650, and that took a little bit of getting used to. Not for the weight or anything like that. It was quite weird. When I did my assessment lesson, he basically said, jump on the bike, try and go around these cones, do this, do that. And he was just like, right, well, you can ride the bike. You know, you've just done everything that you're required to, so let's get out on the road. Literally took 10 minutes. So I was riding my DRZ for, I think it was 2 years. And during that time, the first sports bike I rode was this is brilliant, 125 for 7 years, onto a 400. And then the first bigger bike that I tried, BMW S1000RR. Took one out with Baron. This is going back a few years now, man. I'm getting old. And as you can tell from that video, I'm not very good riding a sports bike, and I was not used to using an inline 4 engine. I just was not used to the way that it worked, because I was so used to the engine style of a single cylinder with its shorter shifting and its power down low. I did okay. And obviously the handling is totally different. Yeah, so I had the DRZ for a couple of years, and then I got my XJ6 because my DRZ just decided to just keep imploding. If you're not a subscriber, my man, that bike is a labour of love, and a lot of that love came from you guys, so thank you for helping me with that. But anyway, I digress. I got my XJ6, and that's when I really was able to get used to riding sportier feeling bikes. Now, this doesn't feel like a sports bike, it's somewhere between a sports bike and a naked upright. So, riding my DRZ and then getting the XJ6, jumping between the two was odd, to say the least, at first. Because there's a totally different riding style, totally different riding style and feel to each type of bike. After about 4, 5, 6 months of like riding the DRZ, riding the XJ6, jumping backwards and forwards, I didn't get the same feeling, the same like really strange feeling. Like the DRZ's got loads of torque low down, it's very tall, it's very light, it's very flicky. Whereas in the XJ6 you need to use the revs, you're more sat down in the bike, the centre of gravity is different, the way that you use your body position is different. But as I say, after a while, that became second nature to just like switch backwards and forwards, almost as if my brain had created a preset. Now, in the past 3 years, I've had the opportunity to ride about 50 different bikes of vast different styles, you know, from 125 scooters to 125 cruisers to 125 enduros, 250 sports commuters, A2 bikes, 600cc sports bikes, 1000cc monsters, track bikes. I've ridden one large CC cruiser, a couple of small cruisers, and they're important to this, I'll get to that later on. You know, BMW 1200 GS's, maxi scooters, all the way up to like a 1.6 litre BMW land barge, the GT that I rode, that, man, that thing needed a reverse gear. You know, to Bonneville calf races and MASH 400 calf races, you know, I've tried to try everything I can. You can see most of these as reviews on my channel in a playlist called Motorcycle Reviews. So check it out, I'll link it at the end. So what my point here is I've ridden a lot of bikes of a lot of styles, and I've been able to draw some conclusions that maybe some might not get that opportunity to do. Well, not until they've been riding a very long time and they've had the opportunity to ride a lot of different bikes, but that's not going to be in such a compressed, small amount of time that you can really compare backwards and forwards. Now, as I say, a lot of these sort of middle ground bikes, the feeling of the style of riding them is fairly similar, and yeah, you might have to get used to this little thing or that little thing, but nothing's drastically different. Which which is why you can see me now when I review bikes, jump onto bikes, be relatively comfortable and natural feeling quite quickly because I've ridden enough things like it. But when it came to those 125cc cruisers I recently reviewed, the and I've currently got the Lexmoto Michigan. No, the 125ccs, they've got the weight, the power, it's different from normal cruisers. That's not the comparison here. The comparison is just riding style and versus kind of looks. Because I thought I kind of knew how a cruiser would feel to ride. And frankly, I was completely wrong. It took me a lot to get used to riding them. Like, put my feet out frontwards, the body positioning's different. The centre of gravity being so low obviously really changes things. Wow. Talk about lightweight. Yes, I am making this video as an excuse to just go for a ride. Oh, it's nice out. So what really surprised me about riding these cruisers was the fact that I was so unused to the feel. It's so different. And I didn't imagine it would be that different, and it is not in the slightest how I imagined it would feel. Now, as I've said before, I am not the biggest fan of cruisers, to be fair. I don't really like the way they look. The I prefer to the Lexmoto, for instance, just on looks. So if I was picking bikes out of a lineup for teams, the cruiser is probably the last one I'm going to pick. But if someone said, don't pick it on looks, pick it on funness of riding, the cruiser would be quite close to the top. Because I have absolutely loved chucking the things around. Now, they do have that 125, you know, fun of not being able to break the speed limit and stuff like that, and just razzing it around everywhere. But the feel of them through the corners, to throw them around, to scrape from peg to peg, is massive fun. Proper fun. Would I ever own one? No, I don't like the way they look. Each to their own and all that. I'm really not one of those people who's like, well, I don't yuck other people's yums, as I say. When it comes to bikes, you get a feeling from certain bikes that you just like, I love this bike. And you might hate the fact that you love it, but you still love it. And that's different for everyone, and no one should be going around saying, well, no, that bike's terrible because I think it's terrible. Okay, yeah, if it's actually terrible because of physical reasons, well then yeah, okay, fair enough, but not just because of the way you think it is. Yes, I review bikes and give my opinion on them, but that doesn't mean that I'm right and it changes the way things are. It's just my opinion and nothing more. There is the age-old thing of don't read a book by its cover. Don't think you know how a certain bike style is going to be just because you've ridden lots of other bikes. Try it. You might hate the look of it. You might find you absolutely love the feel of it. And I think that's something that's happened to. I've watched a lot of reviews of people riding the Yamaha Nikon. You know, everyone says, I hate the way it looks, but actually this rides really nicely. I haven't got the, well, I haven't tried to ride that yet. I'm not jumping on that bandwagon just yet. But there's a good example of how feel can be fantastic, but looks can throw you off. So don't get me wrong, I'm completely guilty of this as well. As I say, one of my favourite 125 bikes I've ever ridden is the Commando. Would I ever buy one? Well, if it was a toy, an extra toy, yeah, okay, I probably would, but I can't afford to do stuff like that. Not when you've already got one extra toy, being a DRZ. You know, I would not buy a cruiser because it doesn't tick that oh, I love that thing box. It's like my DRZ. Every time I gotta close that garage door and I just get a glimpse of it at a certain angle sometimes, I'm like, God, that's a good looking bike. I'm so happy that I'm lucky enough to own that and this one, so that one doesn't blow itself up again. I'm also incredibly lucky to have got to ride all these different styles of bikes and kind of learn these things that I've learned. It's very difficult to get what I mean into words because it's all to do with feelings and emotions and how a bike makes you feel. You can't particularly put your finger on what it is about it. If I was to say, why do I like the cruisers so much? I think it's because they're low, they're flickable, and they're not really supposed to do what I do with them. You're not, well, they are and they aren't. You know, they're not designed to be ridden fast, they're not designed to be pushed through corners, but because you're pushing it, it's just fun. It switches all those pushing it, you know, little scary moments every now and then, buttons, but you're not going super fast. So the way I'm going to draw a conclusion on this section of the video is that the way that a bike looks and makes you feel that way can be very different to the way that it makes you feel when you ride it. Like, you might love the look of a bike but hate the way that it rides, opposed to like with the cruisers, I love the way that they ride but don't really like the way they look. You just have to decide what's more important to you, or find a middle ground. Now there's a little bit more I want to add on to this, but it's slightly different, but you'll understand where I'm coming from what I've just said. I think something that a lot of people don't talk about when it comes to new riders getting onto bigger bikes is everyone just talks about the speed. Oh, you know, going from 125 up to, say, I don't know, a 600, it's so fast. It's always about the speed, the speed, the speed. But completely, no one seems to ever mention the fact that, like, the cornering is completely different. And if you've come from a 125cc scooter and you do your A2 and then you get onto a 600cc sports bike, or I don't know, an MT-07 is a good example for a lot of A2ers, bike I really should get my butt on at some point. The way that that is to ride is going to be completely different, not just because of the speed, but maybe more so in ways because of the cornering. Now there's two types of crashes with new riders that I think are very much telling, and it's going off in a corner, normally low siding or just straight off into a hedge or something like that. Now I think this happens for two reasons. Most people assume it's because they were going too fast, you're going too quick, you know, and that's true. A lot of people, they get on a larger cc bike, they're not used to the acceleration yet, they don't realise that if you're doing double the speed, it's not double the stopping distance, it's like 4 times the stopping distance because it's exponential. So they come into a corner, too hot, and you're just never going to get the bike round that, and you go off. Or you're low side because you're braking, or you target fixating something and go into that. Well, that's actually the second one. I've seen many crashes from new riders who could have very easily got round a corner, but because they're not used to the way that a bike feels, the way that it handles, because they haven't, you know, they may have got themselves used to the speed, but they haven't got the proficiency of getting the bike round a corner. And we all know there's those times that we go into a corner too hot, and you have to do something to get round it. Now with like my XJ6, I just lean it down, bit of throttle, and just hope that I get round it. You don't want to brake, you don't want anything like that. You are not going to get around the corner braking. Trust me, you want to get that thing leant over and just hope for the best. Thanks, mate. But that takes a lot more progressive learning than just getting used to straight line speed, in my opinion. Still got wetness in the corners. So I don't think that all new rider crashes can be put down to speed. A lot of it is an inexperience of cornering and just not knowing how that bike's going to react and what to do with it. It is all different. As I say, this has been highlighted to me because I thought I'd ridden enough different bikes now that I wasn't going to get caught out by anything, not being used to it. Not that I've been caught out by the cruisers, but didn't expect it. It took me sideways. It was like, whoa, these are really fun to ride. Which also brings me on to just basically saying, when it comes to bikes, don't get set in your ways when you're looking for a bike or looking for a new bike. Try different styles, test ride them. I know it's not possible if you're on a 125, but if you're on a bigger bike, you know you can just, it's fun to do anyway. You just go to dealers and like, I'm very interested in this, can I take a test ride? Sure, here you go, take it out for an hour. I really think it's important to try stuff you don't like, and try it a few times, because, you know, I've seen it at like bike nights when you see someone who's, well, let's call them Mr. 600 Supersport. That is their bag. They ride 600 Supersports and nothing else. And one of their mates might have a different style of bike and they're like, hey, here's the keys, take it for a ride, see what you think. And they go off for a 20-minute ride and they come back, and sometimes when it comes to supermotos, normally in my experience, people are like, oh my god, that thing is so much fun. But there have been examples where people are like, no, I really don't like it, I really don't like it. Now that may be that they're never going to like it, but I think judging a style of bike, an entire style of bike, by a 20-minute ride is a bad idea. I really think you need to get used to the riding style, the positioning and that stuff, which takes a while before you find the bits that switch your on switches. When it's all new and you know, different, it is never going to feel right. Basically, wow, you are going some for a little Lotus. So as a conclusion of all this, don't treat a book by its cover. It's an obvious thing, but equally don't trust that book by the first 2 pages. Get a few more pages in, get some experience with it, get to feel it, see what it's like, and then you might find you really like it. And that every different bike has a different feel. Even different bikes are the same style. One you might love, one you might hate. Like, one of these ways will take me home, and the other way will get me lost. I think it's this way that will get me home. Now, obviously, certain bikes are going to be better in certain situations just because they're made for that situation. But when it comes down to it, most bikes are designed to just be ridden on the road at normal speeds. Okay, some of them are designed to go a lot faster than that, but you're going to be riding around on the road at normal speeds most of the time. Maybe you have a little squirt here and there. Maybe you're a complete lunatic and you redline it absolutely everywhere, in which case you probably want to keep that to the track. As I say, there may be no great revelations in here for anyone necessarily. Maybe this was all obvious to everyone else, and riding all these different bikes didn't really teach me anything. I just learned what everyone else learns. I don't know. But I do say this: if you get the opportunity to ride a bike, even if it's one you don't like, you don't like the look of it, you don't like anything about it, just try it for the experience. You know, you can't criticise a film until you've watched it, and you can't really criticise a film unless you've watched all of it, because if you've not seen all of it, you don't know. You've got a limited opinion. So try the things you don't like, and then you can be like, I hate that because of X, Y, and Z. I know, I've tried it, rather than do what I did, which was, I don't like the look of them, I probably won't like the way they ride, which was wrong. Well, there we go. I hope that makes sense to you as to what I'm trying to get across. As I say, a lot of this is about putting feelings into words, and that is an inherently difficult thing to do. Right, well, absolutely massive thanks to my Patreon supporters. You guys are amazing, and thank you to the few people who've been supporting me through PayPal recently and through the Spicy 110 Metalworks. I know I haven't got a lot of stuff made recently. I have been so busy putting my time into creating content for you guys that I'm just flat out. But you know, while it's summer, make hay while the sun shines. If you found this video interesting or useful, please do hit that like button. It really helps me a lot. And subscribe to my channel if you're not, because I try and bring the best content I can and answer the questions that people need to know to basically get them on two wheels and make good decisions. Or what you want to say, good decisions, informed decisions. You have to take lots of people's opinions, and then you can make an informed decision. Anyway, I'm going to go. Bye-bye.
If you enjoyed this video and the other content on the channel, please consider following the links in the description to show your support.